Adrian gazed up at Hawthorne Manor, anxiety twisting his stomach into knots. The old mansion loomed above him, casting dark shadows across the grounds. His aunt was turning the menacing mansion into a museum to display their family's odd antiquities collection. He wanted her to succeed, but he knew the building still held sinister secrets, including one he'd kept carefully hidden for more than 20 years, and he couldn't let her find out now. His worry was that when construction resumed tomorrow, the workers might stumble upon what he'd been hiding. If it was ever discovered and disturbed, it could unleash chaos beyond anything he could imagine. He had hoped to keep the past buried forever. Yet with every bucket of dirt the machinery churned, he felt like those dark truths were on the verge of being unearthed once more. The only thought on his mind was how he could stop it.
Adrian, welcome home, dear.
His Aunt Victoria greeted him warmly at the front door. He hadn't been back since he was a troubled teenager dabbling in the occult.
Isn't it marvelous? The grand opening is next week. I can't wait to share all these wondrous objects with the world.
Adrian forced a smile.
It's impressive, but are you sure this is wise, Aunt Victoria? Some things are better left alone.
Victoria dismissed his concerns with a wave of her hand.
You always had such a vivid imagination as a boy. But you're an adult now. Surely you've outgrown such silly notions.
If only she knew what he had actually done down there, the true darkness he had tapped into as a reckless youth. These are the secrets that should never see the light of day. As the new day began, the work continued on the final room, the mansion's cavernous basement. The workers found a hidden doorway leading to a chamber that was not recorded on any plans.
Magnificent,
Victoria exclaimed.
This will give us plenty of space for our exhibit on black magic.
Adrian's stomach turned. They had found it before he could stop them. At least they didn't know what he'd done. The men marveled at the sinister artifacts lining the shelves, oblivious to the danger they were in. Adrian eyed the artifacts nervously as Victoria examined them. Her gaze settled on a beautiful yet sinister-looking jar, one that he recognized all too well. On the floor surrounding the jar were motifs and sigils, all put there by Adrian to keep it and the mansion's occupants safe. Some of the motifs seemed to have been damaged by the workers.
Don't touch that!
Adrian shouted, causing Victoria to sharply spin to face him. The jar slipped from Victoria's grasp and shattered on the floor, causing the artifact inside to break into two pieces. Feeling the atmosphere change, a breeze coiling and swirling around him, then the temperature plummet, he knew something was wrong. Victoria stared wide-eyed and shocked at the damage she had just caused. Adrian seized her arm.
We have to leave now!
He hurried her upstairs, his heart pounding. In breaking the vessel, he knew they had released what should have remained locked away for all eternity. But how could he explain all this to his aunt without revealing the secrets of his past? Over the next few nights, sleep eluded Victoria. She lay awake, hearing odd sounds. The breeze blowing through the trees, creaking timbers. Just the normal nighttime noises of an old house, she told herself. On one occasion, she was sure she heard whispering coming from outside the bedroom door. When she switched on the light, she swore she saw a shadowy figure dart across the hall. A chill ran down her spine. After tomorrow's meeting with the museum curator, she decided she would call Adrian. Perhaps it was time to have him and his paranormal team investigate. After all, she had promised if anything strange occurred, she would contact him. She did, however, feel ridiculous when thinking about what it would entail. She did not believe in such things as the paranormal, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was wrong, that she was being watched within these walls. Hopefully they could find answers. The next morning, Victoria tried to shrug off the strange events as tiredness due to not sleeping and nerves about the impending grand opening. However, an unsettled feeling still lingered, like eyes watching her every move. Glancing in the mirror, she thought she glimpsed a face appear over her shoulder, but when she turned to look, there was nothing. Victoria shuddered. Tonight, she would call Adrian. There was something going on, and she wanted answers. Adrian hung up the phone, the chilling conversation with his aunt still echoing in his ears. He had sensed it coming the moment when their team would be called upon to investigate what was lurking within the shadows of Hawthorne Manor. But he'd hoped that it would never come to it. He found himself pacing the narrow hallway that connected the kitchen and the lounge, the dimly lit rooms of the modest house offering no solace in comparison to the imposing Hawthorne Manor. He furrowed his brow, worrying about what he had caused by messing with the artifact, the cursed object that he had prayed he'd never encounter again. Breaking it triggered this sinister turn of events. Adrian knew that he had to act swiftly before the growing evil within the manor ensnared his aunt in its wicked web. He had felt the oppressive weight of darkness settle over the mansion like a shroud, and didn't know what would happen next. With trembling hands, he picked up his phone and dialed the number of his old colleague and friend, Samuel Blackwood, a renowned paranormal investigator who, even though he was a skeptic, could no longer deny the mounting evidence of supernatural forces that Adrian had presented to him over the years.
Samuel, I'm going to need your help again.
Adrian's voice quivered with urgency.
We need to reassemble the team.
Within 48 hours of that call, the team gathered at the manor. Sam arrived first, his skepticism overshadowed by the gravity of the situation. Following him was Emily Ramirez, the tech specialist, who brought with her an arsenal of ghost hunting equipment as well as her latest experimental inventions, all packed into her modified pickup truck. Isabella Thornton, the archaeologist, arrived next, carrying not equipment, but a wealth of knowledge on ancient rituals, haunted artifacts, and demonic lore, all contained within the countless leather-bound books she had amassed over her illustrious career. If anyone could decipher the sinister mysteries of this place, it was her. As Emily and Isabella hurriedly unpacked their gear, Adrian pulled Sam aside.
Thank you for coming, old friend. We're going to get to the bottom of this, I swear it.
Sam managed a strained smile.
I hope you know what you're doing. I know you're not telling me everything.
Once the team was set up, they began conducting baseline readings throughout the mansion. Adrian watched their faces carefully. They were etched with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The atmosphere in the manor seemed to be heavy and mysterious, as if the house itself were a sentient being aware of the intruders in its domain. That night, they held a vigil in the underground exhibit room, unaware that they were surrounded by Adrian's old occult collection. Adrian tensed as unnatural shadows danced along the walls where there should be none. Emily gasped as her handcrafted instruments suddenly spiked. Then came the whispers, sibilant, inhuman whispers that sent shivers down their spines. An icy chill settled into the room.
These readings are crazy.
Emily exclaimed, scrutinizing her flickering monitors. Isabella's expression darkened.
Breaking that jar woke something evil. The atmosphere is dark and heavy. We need to find out what it is and stop it before it gets stronger. Let's get rid of it.
Sam shook his head in disbelief as he glimpsed a wraith-like shape skittering by in the darkness.
Let's research the mansion and the broken artifacts history, then try to find out what all these other artifacts are before we do anything else. The last thing we want is to make matters worse.
Adrian nodded, his determination unwavering.
I know where we can begin our search for answers. There are meticulous records stored in the mansion. I remember seeing and reading some of them when I was a child. I barely scratched the surface of what they contain.
Exposing his darkest secrets to the light might finally help him absolve the guilt he carried from his reckless foray into the occult as a youth. For his aunt's sake, and to ease the torment of his own soul, he was determined to see this investigation through. The team vowed to uncover the truth behind the malevolent disturbances in Hawthorne Manor regardless of the cost. Adrian could only hope he possessed the courage to face the forces he had unwittingly unleashed. The night was growing late, but their true work was just beginning. Adrian and Isabella hunched over ancient texts in the manor's dusty library. They were searching for clues to the sinister secrets of its past. Adrian, who already possessed this knowledge, turned the brittle pages of a diary, its faded ink revealing disturbing rituals once practiced within these walls. He remembered finding this diary as a curious youth and not understanding the evil described inside. Now, years later, he realized the madness that had gripped his ancestor who penned these pages. The experiments were not just bizarre, they were steeped in malevolence and full of sacrifices that chilled his soul. The text detailed failed attempts to summon otherworldly entities, unholy rituals, and the chilling sacrifices they undertook, all designed to gain unimaginable power. As Isabella meticulously translated the cryptic writings, her eyes widened with a mix of fascination and horror on her face.
These rituals, they're beyond anything I've ever encountered. It's as if they were trying to open a gateway to another world.
Adrian nodded, his face etched with a mix of dread and recognition. He was already aware of everything they were uncovering. He'd read it all before.
I can't believe I'm related to someone who dabbled in such darkness.
He paused, his gaze distant.
There's something else you need to know, Isabella. None of this would have happened if it wasn't for me. Something happened down in that chamber back when I was 17.
In the hushed solitude of the basement chamber, a 17-year-old Adrian sat alone, surrounded by ancient diaries and leather-bound books. He had always been drawn to the secrets of Hawthorne Manor, driven by an insatiable curiosity that often bordered on recklessness. As he flipped through the yellowed pages of one particularly cryptic diary, his voice trembled with uncertainty. He began reciting the Latin phrases he discovered in the text. His recitation of the forbidden words triggered an unseen force within the room. The very air seemed to crackle with sinister energy. Among the swirling dirt and dust appeared an artifact levitating in front of him. He'd somehow managed to summon it. The room grew colder, and Adrian's breath misted in the chilled air. He felt a malicious presence creeping into his very being, a force that sought to possess him, to use him as a vessel for its nefarious desires. Panic welled up inside him as he realized the peril he had unwittingly unleashed. Desperation guided his trembling hands as he snatched the cursed artifact and a sinister-looking jar from a nearby shelf. In a frenzied bid to protect himself, Adrian recited a hastily remembered incantation, words that seemed to pour from his mouth like a desperate plea. As the entity was drawn into the vessel, its howls of fury grew fainter, like a fading storm. Adrian wasted no time, inscribing sigils on the wooden floor with trembling hands, symbols meant to bind the spirit and prevent its escape. As he recited the final incantation, his voice shaking with the weight of his actions. The room fell into an eerie silence, and the malevolent spirit, now trapped within the cursed jar, could only seethe with impotent rage. Exhausted and shaken, he wiped the sweat from his brow, his fingers still trembling. The diaries and books that had been his source of curiosity and folly now stood as chilling reminders of the darkness that lurked within Hawthorne Manor. He knew that he could not risk anyone else finding the chamber, or the dangers that lurked within. With a heavy heart, he blocked the entrance to the chamber and tried to hide it with boxes and shelves that already lined the basement walls, hoping that this would be the last time he or anyone else would set foot in that chamber.
I knew this would happen. The incantation I put on that jar was only temporary. I couldn't prevent them from breaking the cursed artifact. I failed.
You couldn't have known, Adrian. The past is a relentless force, always seeking to reassert itself.
Their conversation was interrupted by a chilling whisper that seemed to come from the very walls of the mansion. Adrian. Isabella. It hissed. Fear temporarily flowed through them. Adrian and Isabella exchanged a knowing glance. During their research, they had discovered the mansion contained a portal to another world, one that had seemingly reopened when releasing the spirit. It's likely this is where the voice manifested. This caused Izzy's obsession with unraveling all the secrets of Hawthorne Manor to burn brighter than ever. She now knew they were not dealing with a mere spirit, but something far more sinister, a force that may be beyond their ability to control or banish. Undeterred by the mounting terror, Sam and Emily crept through the dimly lit corridors, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Whilst Adrian and Isabella were researching in the library, they continued to investigate the various spectral whispers and the echoing footsteps using Emily's homemade ghost hunting tech. They were trying to capture as much evidence as possible. As they entered Victoria's bedroom, it felt like every creak and groan of the old house seemed to carry a chilling message. They spent the next 15 minutes trying to communicate with the spirit, in hopes to figure out what was happening, but the voice recorder produced nothing of interest. Following the conclusion of their investigation, they decided to head back to the library. They had been investigating now for what felt like hours.
Hopefully Adrian and Izzy have found something. The evidence we've uncovered is worrying.
As they headed back to the library, it felt like they were venturing further into the labyrinth of rooms and hallways. The air grew heavy with tension, and like there was an unseen force pulling them away from the others, it was an irresistible lure that seemed to guide their every step. They eventually made it back to the library. However, the room no longer felt safe. There was now an unsettling atmosphere, an atmosphere that crackled with unnatural energy. It was at this point that the team saw Victoria entering and leaving the library repeatedly through the same door. She explained to the team that she felt trapped. Each attempt to leave the room led her right back through the door she had just exited, as if the mansion itself were a puppet under the spirit's control. While Sam, Emily, and Victoria spent the next few hours trying to figure out a way to leave the library, Adrian and Izzy continued their research. Suddenly, Izzy jumped up from her chair in excitement. She found an old ritual she hoped could banish the spirit, which would hopefully end this whole nightmare. However, it wasn't something she could do on her own. It would require their joint focus. Hands trembling but resolved, they all stood in a circle, preparing to seal away the malevolent spirit before it could consume them all. The room pulsed with a sinister energy, and the entity that lurked within the mansion began to manifest, its form twisted and grotesque. Izzy guided them to recite the arcane words. With their voices unified, they began the ritual. The room shook with the intensity of their collective will. Adrian, Sam, Emily, Izzy, and Victoria stood in a circle surrounded by a mosaic of symbols marked by chalk onto the wooden floor. Candles flickered in the dim light, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. It was the culmination of their journey, the moment when they would confront the malevolent forces that had plagued Hawthorne Manor. As the ritual unfolded, the air grew thick with an electric tension. Incantations flowed from their lips. Their voices, a harmonious chorus, rose and fell like a haunting melody. Symbols glowed with an otherworldly light, and the room seemed to pulsate with supernatural energy. At first, it appeared that their efforts were succeeding. The malevolent spirit, the source of their torment, began to waver, its dark tendrils retreating. The team members exchanged hopeful glances and smiles, believing that victory was within reach. Doubt began to echo through their minds. Had they truly outwitted the spirit, or had it lured them into this very ritual, manipulating them to achieve some sinister goal? Adrian's face was etched with determination and fear as he watched the spirit struggle to hold its form. He began to think that there had to be more to the spirit's plan, something that had yet to reveal itself. Emily, her voice quivering with uncertainty, spoke up.
Is this working? Are we sealing it away for good?
Izzy, her eyes reflecting a deep resolve, replied.
We must continue. We cannot let doubt weaken our resolve now.
The ritual pressed on, the supernatural forces swirling around them in a chaotic dance. Shadows twisted and writhed, and the room became a tempest of energy. Adrian's heart pounded, his mind racing with the weight of his family's dark legacy, the secrets he tried to hide, and the redemption he sought. In a moment of clarity, he realized what the spirit's true aim was. Thinking back to that day, he summoned it. He knew it was to escape by possessing him, to use him as a vessel to cross into the mortal realm. Adrian's resolve wavered, the darkness within him threatening to consume his very soul. But the bonds he had formed with his team, the love and determination that fueled their final stand, could it give him the strength to resist? With a fierce determination, he pushed the spirit back, hoping to seal it away once more. As the ritual reached its peak, there was a blinding burst of light that filled the room. The mansion trembled one last time before falling silent. Was the evil spirit gone? Exhausted and shaken, the team members gathered in the now peaceful room. Their shared ordeal had tested their spirits and deepened their bonds, leaving them with a profound sense of unity. Something subtle had changed in Adrian. Even though the ordeal was over, he still carried the weight of his family's dark legacy, a burden that now seemed to manifest in subtle shifts in his demeanor. As the museum was due to open the following day, the team decided to stay that night just to help clean and tidy before the grand opening. That morning, the new curator performed the grand opening of the museum, unaware of the previous night's exploits. Everyone watched with a mix of pride and apprehension as visitors marveled at the artifacts and curiosities within Hawthorne Manor. Adrian moved among the crowd, his smile carefully concealing the turmoil beneath. His interactions were polite, but there was a glint of something different in his eyes, a distant, calculating quality that went unnoticed by those around him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the museum, a sense of uncertainty lingered. The entity may have gone, but the darkness it had unleashed was not so easily forgotten. Adrian slipped away from the celebration and started to make his way through the museum's dimly lit corridors. Upon reaching the exit, he pushed open the door, took a single step outside, then paused. Without warning, he looked at the security camera overlooking the door and let out a chilling laugh, a laugh that held a sinister promise.